Hey, everybody. How are you guys? It has been a minute. Has it not been a minute? If it doesn't feel like it's been a minute for you, that's great. But it has definitely been a minute for me. If you don't follow me on social media, or if you're not on I guess it's more if you're not on my email list, then you probably don't know this, but our family left France. And I think for some people, it came as a surprise. For us, it didn't feel as much that way. It felt like the end of a chapter. Things were closing, and it was just time. We were getting homesick. And if you're on my email list, you would have heard more about that by now. And because of that, I have not been recording as much, and I miss it. And then so I'm so happy to be here. And I have 3 episodes that are lined up pretty quickly to post one after the other. But what I've been wanting to sit and record that feels really meaningful to me, which I was planning to do a few months ago, was a love letter. And if you are a longtime listener of this podcast, you know that every once in a while I like to do love letter episodes where I just share my love for somebody or for a group of people. I've done it for partners, those who are mentally ill. I did one for people questioning their religion or expanding in their spiritual journeys. And today, this love letter is actually going to go out to members of my most recent graduating class of my full trauma informed coach certification. It was an amazing class. And because it was my first cohort going through this full certification, it was really beautiful. None of us wanted the calls to end. It was so great. And luckily, we have a lot of continuing education calls, expert mentorship calls. And so the thing I love about my certification programs is you go through the program, you apply at your own pace. And if for some reason everything isn't internalized and integrated by the end of the program, that's okay because you still have access to the portal, you still have access to calls, you have access to ongoing continuing education calls that are with me or with other experts, group somatic calls. So it's set up to be very lovey and connected. And for those who want it to last longer, there's plenty of time and space for that. That's one thing that I've really loved to offer to graduates of my certification program since I've been running these, I think, since late 2021. So it's been a while. It's been really fun. And I just finished with, because I was doing advanced certifications only, and then there was demand for full trauma informed coach certifications. And so, because of that demand, we created one, we set one up. I just ran it, and my first group went through, and it was just an amazing experience. And so, what this podcast episode is going to be, it's going to be a love letter to them, to the first cohort, to the first graduating class of this full trauma informed coach certification program. I want to send out this love letter to the recent graduates of my first trauma informed coach certification. And what I will say is, it truly was a privilege to be a facilitator for this cohort. And it was really interesting for me and I've noticed this as I put together certification programs. I do feel like I have a gift of being a super connector and a gatherer of sorts. And when I see that stuff come to fruition, it's magical. It's so magical to see that so that other people can feel loved and supported. But what I've also noticed is that it really is beneficial for me too. And it's fun to be like, oh, this is for me too. I remember having that experience at varying retreats that I put together, especially the one that I did last fall in the south of France. And of course, put it together with everyone else in mind, the retreat participants and the people I was co hosting with, and the somatic practitioner that we hired. Yet it was still so beautiful and beneficial and uplifting for me too. And it can be both. I like that idea is that something being beneficial to me, like a retreat that I host, is that doesn't take away from what other people are getting out of it. In fact, I think it just compounds the experience. And so I've noticed that with the retreat that I held last fall, just wow, I didn't realize that this could be for me too. And it's been really beautiful to see how it's been that way with this trauma informed coaching certification. Okay. So it might sound bizarre to hear that coming from a facilitator, but really, I think there's something to be said for it to be that as well. If you don't know already, One of my earth missions is to create spaces where humans can come as they are and be celebrated, safe, seen, heard, held, heal as needed for simply existing, just being celebrated for existing, not being celebrated as long as they do this thing or as long as they're part of this group or as long as they this. It's no. What if your presence is enough to be celebrated? And so that's part of what I'm doing with these programs that I create is to do everything I can to create environments that are conducive to the utmost safety for people to feel safe, to be seen, heard, held, and witnessed so that healing can happen and growth can happen. And this vision came to my awareness or into my mind around 2021. And that was when I had decided to really just go for it and execute and put into the ethos my first advanced trauma certification program. Okay. So it was the first time that I created it for coaches looking to become trauma informed. And I've had a trauma certification in my mind's eye for years. Like I had been planning one for years before that. Originally, it was going to be a betrayal trauma addendum to a general life coach certification. I had that in my mind, I think since 2017, 2018. But then as I coached and started to work more and more with not just people experiencing betrayal trauma, but other coaches coming to me for support, I started seeing parallels and the importance for all humans to understand our bodies more deeply, understand trauma, to understand our nervous system, to understand what the call of our intuition sounds like coming from our soul. And in fall of 2021, I co-created a program with a trauma therapist and we got to work. And it was an incredible experience and demand continues to be here years later, which is so great. I remember at the time, fall 2021, I felt like the only coach that I knew in my coaching circles talking about trauma and gaps in major coaching programs. I felt like I was the only person talking about this stuff. And it was scary, but I saw the holes and I did it anyway. And today it's definitely become more of a buzzword trauma, nervous system stuff, which I think is good. I think we're just becoming more aware and accepting of what is and what so many humans have been carrying. So when I was putting this together, when I was actually doing this big new thing, it was this vision of this landing pad that really helped me get out of my head, into my body, and ground myself. That's what helped me when I was afraid. There were other tools that I teach in my programs that I also utilize to really focus on what it was that I was creating. And what I just want to say is that what has come from that has been incredible. When I started having past clients want in on this, and this is why, instead of just having the advanced certification program, I decided to come up with this full trauma informed coach certification so that people wouldn't have to go find a general one and then come back to me. Okay. And it's so amazing because we're not just teaching life coach skills. We're not just teaching really basic one dimensional tools. This is very multidimensional, very multifaceted. We're not just teaching one little skill to use and apply to every situation because that's not how it works. We're humans. We all have very different bodies, very different brains, different truths, right? And so we want to have different tools to utilize to meet our clients where they're at. And that's why not only are we teaching a lot of amazing coaching principles in this program, but we're also adding context, contextual layers of understanding to really help humans understand their clients and meet them where they're at. And this is so important. And watching the cohort that I was just working with use, understand, learn, understand, integrate, ask questions about these different contextual layers made a huge difference. And I think it was really powerful to see how they felt safe enough to ask questions to each other, to me, to really understand each other more intimately. And it really facilitated a beautiful environment of safety. So we're learning about, of course, coaching principles, of course, the trauma informed mindset framework that I've developed and set up. But we're also talking about some of the taboo things that people don't want to talk about or shed consciousness or light on. We're talking about religious trauma. We're talking about betrayal trauma. We talk about gender inequities, emotional abuse, setting boundaries as an act of sovereignty. We're talking about nervous system and grounding and triggers, setting boundaries from a nervous system standpoint. We're talking about soul work and a lot of the stuff that a lot of these things that we're talking about that kind of feel like, oh, that feels a little heavy ish. Some of that stuff I just mentioned. When you talk about it, it gets lighter. When you shed light on a shadow, that elevates and raises consciousness. And what I've noticed is when we can blend our own spiritual gifts that we have. What I've noticed is when we're able to approach this subject matter, these contextual layers in such a way where we know how to anchor into our own safety before, during, and after these conversations, is it helps us feel safer to do the soul work, to see what our soul's desire is, to access our intuitive power and our creative side, and to start understanding the language of our body and our body's knowing and accessing our power and claiming our sovereignty, right? That is the magic of so much of this work. Yes, I was teaching a trauma informed coach certification, and a lot of that is so that we can have that contextual understanding to create enough safety in our body to live a soul led life, to really connect to that spiritual side. It's so powerful, so impactful. And so we went through a lot of this during our coaching cohort. And I had such an amazing time working through them with all this stuff. It's been amazing. It's been incredible. I've had great feedback from them. But what I also talked to you about at the beginning of this episode is just that I wanted to share. It's a little bit of a love letter, but just things I loved about working with this particular group. Okay. One thing I wanted to say was that with this initial cohort, which had never happened before, but every single person in this cohort had been raised in the LDS church, for those of you who know what that is, which was interesting because I think if you aren't LDS or if you didn't grow up in the Mormon church, you might think, oh, all of these people are so alike because they all grew up and they have all of this in common. Now, I do think as humans, we'll have so much more in common than, but within this cohort, everyone, of course, is at their own intersectional point of spirituality, right? And there is a lot of stuff happening in certain religious spheres right now, a lot of faith expansion, spiritual expansion, faith journeys, faith deconstruction, faith reconstruction, people letting go, people leaving, people staying, people coming into their knowing and staying. It's just so much is happening there. Maybe this is more than a coincidence. I found myself being a little bit like, I wonder how this will go. We went with it. We made sure that we educated and held space and taught about the potential for religious trauma. And what followed, honestly, was so beautiful. It was ineffable. And I found myself emotional so many times because everybody held the most beautiful space for each other, wherever anyone was as they were. It was such a loving group. There were men that, found healing being in a group of women. Right? And then there were women who found healing having men in the cohort as well. It was just beautiful. And some of the things that I just love about this cohort, I think the biggest thing, really, because it's so healing and it's so sustainable and regenerative, is just love. There was so much love. And so I just want to thank this group for bringing that to the table. Each and every one of them brought so much love to every call. You could see it in their eyes. You could feel it in their energy. And when we got to the peer coaching, it was this whole next level, which I'll talk about later. But the biggest thing was love, and love provides so much healing just on its own, right? Witnessing. Because of that energy there, people were willing to ask certain questions very vulnerably. And not only would those people receive the validation support from me, but they would get that from the group as well. Okay. One of my favorite things to find out is that people were friends and buddies outside of the cohort and had their own little Marco Polo groups or whatnot. And that just warms my soul too, because again, one of my missions is being a super connector. So when I can connect people who are meant to be connected here, oh my gosh, it's just amazing, amazing. So I'm so grateful that people felt safe to develop friendships inside and outside of the cohort as well. I thought it was really beautiful the way this group cared for each other, and you could tell so palpably how much they care about the people that they're going to serve or the people that they're already serving. Or if they saw gaps, if they had already seen gaps in the world of people that they want to potentially serve or teach or support, there's so much care. They all took it very seriously, took this work very seriously because they want to be able to meet their clients where they're at. They want to minimize or eliminate harm. And so they care enough to show up on these calls, to participate, to learn, to do their own work on their own end, to get questions answered. And it's pretty, again, I feel like ineffable is the best way to put it because it just isn't always that way in the coaching industry. There are people that exhibit very bully behavior out there to get clients. I just don't see that with this group, which is really something. Okay. Another thing that I just love is connection. And now I get to meet some of these people in coming weeks, which will be really special because we're going to have a little cohort meetup. And I cannot wait for that. And I think part of why I love that so much and I get so excited about that is because there's something, if we go back to my mission that I spoke about at the beginning of this podcast, it was creating safe landing pads for people to come as they are and be celebrated for simply existing. Okay. So there's just something about these live meetups or live retreats where we get to do that for each other. We get to be that for each other and we get to celebrate each other for who we are. So I think it says something for the group to see them all get excited about these live meetups and different things like that for what they've all co-created together. It's been pretty magical. Okay. So just that was really powerful during the instruction, I would say the instructional portion of the program. We also had processing coaching calls too, where people will get coached as well. So people can get a feel for my coaching style, which was great because then when we entered the peer coaching program portion of the program, which definitely there were some nerves with respect to that for the people who were joining and participating. It might have been my favorite part of the program. Okay. Because these people coached so differently than what I saw new coaches doing years and years ago, over half a decade ago when I got coached. Instead of putting on like a thought detective hat and scanning and trying to quickly diagnose or discard and do away with a thought, so much more went down. There was so much witnessing and validation and appreciation, which really propagated an organic shifting of beliefs and thoughts. Okay. And then when we had clients who were venting and grieving in some of those tougher places, we just did some work to support the weary nervous system, right? Maybe a little more action based, action focused. The whole experience was really incredible because I got to get a little taste of the impact that this cohort is going to make in the world. It was incredible. There's just, again, I keep saying love, but there was just so much love. It was so palpable that I just wanted to thank the group. Whoever's listening to this podcast, I want to thank you for being a part of that because it really impacted me as well. Okay. And some of these little peer coaching sessions were only 10 minutes long. And it's pretty magical to see what could happen in 10 minutes. A lot of these coaches, to me personally, a lot of these coaches were doing more as new coaches than some coaches that I've seen who have been working for 3, 4, 5 years. And I'm not trying to it's not just about me trying to tout my own horn or tout my program's horn, but I think really knowing how to meet people where they're at with their body and understanding the body and understanding what they're needing helps people know how to serve and support them in the moment. And it might not always look like these huge radical shifts, but that's not what our body always needs. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of witnessing and validation, right? It's the little 1% shifts that happen consistently over time that create radical, sustainable change. And I got to witness this with people during their peer coaching, and it was really beautiful. Another thing I really enjoyed doing with various members of this cohort was workshopping around different ways that they could integrate gifts that they already had or what they already know with the stuff that we learned in the program, right? Some people who came through this program already had other trainings and certifications, but they wanted to cross some final T's and dot some I's before they start putting their stuff into the world. Some people already have successful businesses and wanted to see how trauma-informed coaching could be integrated into what they're already doing so they can serve their clients in a more robust way or tweak what they're already doing for their clients. Some wanted to work for others and may have already gotten hired by the people they wanted to work for, which is cool. And some wanted to start their own business from scratch. So it was just really fun to workshop different ways that they can combine their unique spiritual gifts, their unique talents with what we're learning in the program to create their own product because there isn't one modality to healing. Every human is their own modality to healing. So any business you create, like there isn't one way to run a business, and running your business your way is really important. It's important to focus on that because you are your own modality, right? So learning these tools that I teach, all while combining them with your unique gifts, supports you in creating something that no one else can. So doing that actual work with members of the cohort was really fulfilling and cool. I can't wait to see what happens. Because when you trust in that truth that you're your own modality and that no one has what you can offer, right? Even if people try, your soul's work could never be copied. And this is what they're doing. And it's just so amazing. And I admire so much of them. And I'm so inspired by their thoughtfulness, their care, their love, and frankly, for them just being who they are. And now I get to meet some of them in person as I hold retreats or meetups. And this is just perfect because being in person is always such a full circle moment to me. It's full circle. It's amazing because there's something that happens for me. There's something that happens that's so special whenever I'm live with people and it's seeing that vision. It's seeing that vision come together in real life. Safe landing pads. And here we are in this little moment. I'm with this little microcosm of people where we've all been together, working together for however long as we've been together 6 to 8 months, probably 8 months, been together for 8 months. And now they're going to go do what they're meant to do. That's in line with their mission, their vision. It's just incredible. And I love where we're heading. I love where the world is heading. I love where these alumni are heading. And I just wanted to thank you. And so if you were a part of that cohort, I want to thank you for being you, for showing up the way that you did, and for what you brought to the program, what you brought to the table in simply existing, but also everything else that you did. And if you're not in this cohort yet and you want to learn more, of course, you can go to my website. It's in the show notes and watch my masterclass to learn about our next group starting next month. But you can also just stay tuned and follow me. Stay tuned for upcoming podcast episodes, okay, where I talk because I'll be putting my masterclass on the podcast as well. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. And for you cohort members, I cannot wait to meet you live. You're all so amazing. I hope you'll have the best day. Take care.